Hey there, welcome to the channel. My name is James, and here at 20th and 21st Movies, we are about all things cinema. All right, I want to take a few minutes to share with you my thoughts on a new release in the Criterion Collection. This is the latest film from David Lynch to enter the Criterion Collection, and it's coming in at spine number 1175 in the Criterion Collection. It is his 2006 film starring Laura Dern, Jeremy Irons, and Justin Theroux, and it is Inland Empire. This is the 2006 film from director David Lynch, who is no stranger to the Criterion Collection. He has a number of titles in the collection. I actually have them over to my left over here that I'll show you in just a moment. But this is the latest of his films to enter the collection. And this film has such a fascinating story in that it's really an independent film. He shot this film without any studio interference. He did it his way and on his terms. He told the story of Inland Empire the way he wanted to tell this story. And it took him about 2.5 to 3 years to actually make this movie. You know, you have Justin Theroux, who's appeared in other David Lynch's, films. And you have, Jeremy Irons, who is just fantastic. I love him. He plays the director of the movie that Laura Dern and Justin Theroux's characters are playing in. So this movie really takes the abstractness and the obscurity of David Lynch's films. That is really the trademark of David Lynch's films. Inland Empire takes that to the next level in terms of being abstract and obscure and non-linear in the way that the story is presented. And that is a trademark that is typical of a lot of David Lynch's films. So when you look at David Lynch's filmography that is out there on Criterion currently, these are the titles that are in the Criterion Collection from David Lynch. And of course, now we have Inland Empire added to this mix. But you have films like Eraserhead, which is his feature debut, a very abstract movie. I still don't understand this movie, but it is a very fascinating film. It's not one of my favorites of Lynch, but it is a very fascinating film from this director. This is probably my favorite of his films, Mulholland Drive. Wow, what an amazing movie. It's from 2001. And I mean, this film has such a fascinating story and will leave you It will leave you just thinking about what is going on in this movie, and you'll be analyzing this film really for the rest of your life, after watching this movie. Mulholland Drive, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, a follow-up to his TV series, which I still have not seen, but this is an interesting film, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Another film, this film stars Kyle MacLachlan, and this is Blue Velvet, wonderful film from 1986. Probably his most straightforward film is based on a tragic true story in Victorian London, England. And it is The Elephant Man. This stars Anthony Hopkins, John Hurt. An amazing, amazing cast of this incredible movie from 1980, The Elephant Man. Probably, along with Dune, two of his most straightforward movies that I know of, that I've seen. And then, of course, last year, at the end of the year, Criterion released this awesome 4K edition of Lost Highway from David Lynch. This film is also abstract and obscure in the storytelling. It takes you some time to figure out what's going on. And it is absolutely fantastic. It stars Bill Pullman and Patricia Arquette. Great, great movie. And now Inland Empire here, this 2006 film, it takes that abstractness and obscurity to the next level. I mean, if you thought those films were hard to understand, this one makes those films look like, ABC paint by numbers, okay? This film is quite a bear to understand, but it is for me, a very satisfying, journey and experience watching this movie. It's about a 3-hour affair, comes in at 180 minutes. And in a nutshell, this movie is, if I were to sum up what is Inland Empire about, what is this movie? It is basically a woman in trouble, according to the tagline here. A woman in trouble. Laura Dern, she plays an actress in this film. The actress's name is Nikki Grace, and Justin Theroux plays Devin Burke. They are actors in Hollywood. Nikki Grace, her career has sort of come up against the wall. She's had better days. Her career, the best days of her career are over, and she's trying to revive her career and get back in the game. And in that aspect, this film reminds me in some ways of this film from Billy Wilder, Sunset Boulevard. which stars Gloria Swanson in just a legendary role. Of course, you have the very famous line in this film, "All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up." One of the most classic lines and devastating lines in all of cinema. This film from 1950 from Billy Wilder is an absolute masterpiece. It came out in 1950. It's a Hollywood story, and similar to that Hollywood story, we get this Hollywood story, Inland Empire, from David Lynch. And wow, what an amazing film. I mean, David Lynch shot this over a 3-year period. He did it without any studio interference. He was able to do everything he wanted and presented this story the way he wanted it presented. And he took his time to do it. He did it over a 3-year period, and he did it without a completed script. He had no completed script at all. He would get inspiration for a scene or two, write down those scenes, and then he'd call the actresses and call the actor. He'd call Laura Dern and say, "Hey, Laura, I'm ready to shoot scene 7 and 8. Can you come here tomorrow morning, or can you come later this afternoon and we can shoot the scene?" And he and Laura Dern worked together to make this happen along with this incredible cast. And David Lynch talks about how Laura Dern had to really trust him, because here's David Lynch shooting this scene himself with this Sony camcorder. He wasn't even using standard Hollywood Panavision type cameras. He was using a Sony camcorder to shoot this movie. And so he had a basic camcorder, limited crew, limited setup, and Laura Dern and Lynch had to work together, and Laura Dern had to trust him. And of course, they had a long-standing relationship, having worked together on different films in the past, but it's just an example of an actor and a filmmaker coming together to make movie-making magic. And wow, what an incredible film. But Laura Dern is an actress. She is trying to revive her career. She is taking on a new movie role, but this movie role is unlike any other film in that this movie was tried before. They tried to make this movie before, but for mysterious reasons, they couldn't finish it. And now they're trying to finish this movie, and there's a sense of dread that accompanies the making of this movie that I won't spoil. And there's a lot of fantastical elements and things happening around Laura Dern that creates an element of dread and danger. And that's why it's called A Woman in Trouble, because she's trying to figure out, where is she going in her career? Can she tell the difference between her real life and the actress and the role that she's playing? Can she tell the difference between herself in the real world as Nikki, or this character that she's playing, Susan, in this movie? And the lines begin to get blurred between what's going on in the real world and what's going on in the movie. And it becomes a movie that's about a film within a film within a film. And those layers are built into this story and part of the complex narrative that David Lynch is presenting. And it is, for me, a very satisfying ride trying to put the pieces together of what's going on in this story. Now, I also recognize that, what's satisfying for me is extremely frustrating for somebody else. So, with David Lynch, you really fall either one or two camps. You either love his films, you really love this storytelling, technique of the abstractness, the obscurity, trying to figure out what's going on. You either love that or you hate it for that reason. You want to understand what the heck is going on. You want it to be clearer. You like a more straightforward narrative versus trying to put together all these puzzle pieces that can never quite all come together, and that's really a trademark of his films, that even as you put together the puzzle pieces, you can never put those final pieces in place and say that you have a definitive understanding of his films. He leaves the interpretation of his films up to the viewer. For some people, that's great. For others, not so much. Let me know in the comments section what side of the ledger you fall on. But as far as this movie, there's a lot going on in this film. It is a wonderful mystery to unravel. And if you are into David Lynch's films, if you're into that type of storytelling, technique, then you're gonna probably love Inland Empire. If you're not into that type of thing, if you are not a big fan of David Lynch's films, for that reason, if this director has never quite spoken to you, then Inland Empire is not going to speak to you either. So I'll just sort of leave it up to you to decide whether or not this is the type of movie you would even be interested in. But it comes in at 3 hours, so it's a 3-hour affair. So if you love David Lynch's films, you're going to get everything you like about his films. And there's going to be a lot to chew on and begin to decipher and put together. So it's going to be a nice mystery for you. The way that this movie was made, in that David Lynch didn't have a completed script, meant that he pieced together all these scenes to put together the story in a way that seems to come together in some senses, but then there's parts of it that you wonder how it fits together. And that's part of the mystery of this film. So as a movie, I absolutely love it, but I can also understand, it's going to divide some people. Now, as far as the Blu-ray disc, that's another interesting thing is in terms of the picture quality, in the sense that this film was shot with a Sony camcorder. It was shot in standard definition. And there's this whole process that this film has undergone that I'm going to open up as I open up the case, you'll see the inside. This is disc 2 that has all the special features. I have disc 1 showing this very mysterious menu up here. And then you see the back here. Very fascinating. But you have a little stapled booklet in here, which I love stapled booklets. Here's the front of it. Here's the back. I'll take a swig of my peppermint tea here real quick. And we'll talk for a second about David Lynch's process of shooting this movie, because included in this booklet, which I find very helpful, is a diagram of the way that he shot this movie. And here it is. Check this out. Check that out. Now I've got it on a sheet of paper and I'll read the description. Basically, you had a mini DV camera. That's the camera that he used to create standard definition video clips. He would edit it in 30 frames a second in an assembly. And at some point it was converted to 35 millimeter film and then converted to HD and made into a high definition video file. Then it was downscaled to a standard definition intermediate. And then he used this program called Topaz Video Enhance AI. So he used artificial intelligence to basically up-res this film up to 4K. That led into the director approved remaster. So they added some color correction to it, and they ultimately, through artificial intelligence, were able to create a 4K master for this film. So you may wonder, well, why wasn't it put on a 4K disc? And from a technical standpoint, I can't completely answer that question, but when you see this film and when you actually see the film itself, you'll sort of understand why this movie is probably not the best suited for a 4K disc. This film is really suited for the Blu-ray presentation that is presented here, just because of the way it was shot, the way it's been converted up to high definition, down converted. That whole process to make this film look as good as it can look is probably best presented on a Blu-ray disc, and that's what we get here. And the picture quality looks really nice. For a film that was shot on a Sony camcorder, it is pretty awesome how nice this film looks on this Blu-ray disc, I must say. I mean, there are some shots that are a little rougher than others because of the intent of the filmmaker, the way that David Lynch wanted this film to be presented. He wanted it to have a little bit of a rough look to it. And you achieve that with the way he shot this film and the way that this film has been converted to HD, and the way that the AI software has worked. It really has cleaned up the image pretty well and makes it look really nice as a high definition image on this Blu-ray disc. I don't think that 4K would add a whole lot to this picture, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think the Blu-ray presentation is quite nice. It's not the best looking Blu-ray you're going to see, just because of the nature of the elements used to make this film. But based on the intent of the filmmaker, this film looks as good as it's going to look, I think, on this Blu-ray disc. So have no issues with the Blu-ray presentation. It's a new high definition digital master approved by David Lynch, supervised by him, made from a 4K restoration. And the 5.1 surround DTS HD master audio sounds quite nice. I mean, you have this foreboding score that is playing over this movie, and it just envelops you in the film and really makes you feel like you're in this rabbit hole of a story. And by the way, rabbits do appear. Rabbit people appears in this movie. And it's part of what you have to figure out in this movie, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, as far as the picture quality and audio quality, the presentation on this Blu-ray is very nice for Inland Empire. Now, as far as the special features, this is part of where this edition from Criterion shines. It's not a ton of special features, but the features on here are really nice. You get a couple of films from David Lynch. You have Lynch 1 and Lynch 2, and it's basically David Lynch. You're seeing him in his filmmaking process. You learn a whole lot about the way he approaches films and just his whole, process of working with actors, working with the people who are involved in his production. Is made by the people who did David Lynch, The Art Life. So I don't have that edition. Let me know in the comment section if you have that and what you think about it. Probably the highlight of this entire supplemental package is a conversation between Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern, a recent conversation where they sit down and they talk about their experiences working with David Lynch. And boy, I tell you what, you learn so much about their respect and their admiration for David Lynch and how much of a joy, and in some cases a challenge, it has been to work with him through the years and how much they appreciate him. So I'm going to play a little clip here of that interview. I've got it up here on my iPad so I can keep track of the timing of it, but I'm going to play this little clip from the interview with Laura Dern and Kyle MacLachlan, actually a sit-down discussion, and Kyle is going to ask Laura a question about how David Lynch promoted her for an Oscar for Inland Empire. You'll definitely want to check this out. Let's press play right now.
So there's a very funny story about David campaigning for nomination and a cow. Can you go into detail about this?
I remember him calling our beloved friend and my publicist, Annette Wolf, and saying, Annette, we're not gonna go some traditional route where people spend millions of dollars on awards campaigns and getting people to see their movie. He goes, let me tell you something. Anything and everything will be sold through the internet. And people will find it. You don't need to tell people it's there. It'll just show up. This was 15 years ago. There was no advertising in that world. And David sat on Hollywood Boulevard in a director's chair.
Look at the cow.
With a cow on a leash and a poster of Inland Empire that said, for your consideration, and had a cigarette in hand and just hung out. And two guys were driving up and they were like, oh my God, is that David, wait, what? Is that David Lynch? And they started filming on their phone and they put it up, I think, on YouTube. And suddenly this moment went viral.
So yeah, I mean, just fascinating. I mean, it just helps you get into the mind of David Lynch and of this incredible filmmaker that is very hard to fully understand, but you either fall on one side of one camp or the other with Mr. Lynch. But definitely want to hear in the comment section what you all think of David Lynch's films and what you think about Inland Empire if you've seen this movie. So in a nutshell, I am still processing this film, to be honest with you. I've just recently watched it, still putting the pieces together in my own mind, but I can tell you that I enjoyed the journey of watching this film and going through the special features on this second disc that's included in here is an absolute delight. I mean, you know, what more can I say? That conversation between MacLachlan and Laura Dern is fantastic, and it is absolutely a highlight of this disc, of that second disc that you'll want to definitely see. And then there's, 75 minutes of extra scenes, more of what happened, more things that happened. So you see 75 extra minutes of what happened, of scenes in the movie. Of course, this is a 180-minute film, so what more do you need to see? Well, those scenes add to the experience of this film. You have a ballerina sequence, which is a 2007 short film from Lynch. And then you have another reading by Lynch of excerpts from Room to Dream, which is his 2018 book with critic Christine McKenna. So Room to Dream is a 2018 book he wrote with Christine McKenna. That has been featured on some of the other releases from Criterion of David Lynch films. So you have a reading of Room to Dream that's in Lost Highway. You have a reading from that same book in the Elephant Man release. And I think those are the only two, I believe those are the only two of his releases that have that. Let me see if his other ones feature that. Yeah, I don't think his other ones feature that, but yeah. The Elephant Man release and Lost Highway also feature readings and excerpts from Room to Dream that you'll want to make note of, but it's also included, an excerpt is also included in the Inland Empire release. And in that excerpt, you learn a little bit about David Lynch's upbringings, and you just learn more about the background of David Lynch and his inspiration, and just absolutely fantastic. It's Room to Dream. It's just learning more about how this artist, got his inspiration to do his films. Of course, you get a trailer, which tells you nothing about what this movie's about, which is part of the mystery of it. But what can I say? Just an amazing release from Criterion. Inland Empire. I love the mystery of this movie. I love the way this movie makes me think. I'm still processing it. I know I'll never fully understand it. There's different ways to interpret it, but that's part of what I love about David Lynch's films. You couple that with a nice presentation, given the source materials that were involved, a really nice presentation on this Blu-ray disc, and some supplements that give you so much insight into David Lynch as a filmmaker. And you have the makings of what I think is one of the best additions from Criterion so far this year. And as I think about the editions that I've seen so far, like the 4K of The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, Imitation of Life. I look here and I see, of course, Dazed and Confused 4K, which I don't include because that's a 4K upgrade of an edition that's already been out in the collection. But as I look at what I've seen so far from the Criterion Collection, I have to say, I think this might be the best edition from Criterion that I have seen so far this year. And when I get ready to put together a top 10 list of my top 10 favorite Criterion editions of the year for 2023, this one is an early contender to potentially be on that list. We shall see. There's a long way to go in this year, but boy, this edition from Criterion of Inland Empire, this has the potential of being in contention of being in my top 10 of the year. And so far, I think it's my favorite edition from Criterion of the year so far. But the year is still young. There's a lot of year left to go, and we'll see what else comes out in the remainder of the year. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Inland Empire. It's definitely recommended if you are a Lynch fan. If you like his films, you're probably going to like Inland Empire. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to appreciate it as a piece of art. You're going to appreciate it for the way it was put together. It's completely independent. It is Lynch doing a film the way he wants to do it without any, strings being pulled by Hollywood. And you got to appreciate that. Now, if you're not into Lynch's films, then I'll tell you, you're probably not going to like Inland Empire. And that's basically where I'll leave it. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you think of Inland Empire if you've seen it? What are your favorite films from David Lynch? And what titles are you excited about that's coming out from Criterion or any other labels very soon here in the month of April? April looks to be a pretty stacked month. There's a ton of great titles coming out. What are you most excited that's coming out in the month of April? Let me know all that goodness in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time for the movies. Peace.